You've taken time to speak on this matter. Under normal circumstances, this is not a motion actually that we normally debate. In fact, in the history of, I think, this House, as far as I can recall, we've always dispensed such motions within 10 or 20 minutes. But I think members had missed the microphone and the cameras, Madam Speaker, and therefore it was only fair that we allow people to say something, and members have spoken on many things, but I want to appreciate their contribution, actually of every member that has spoken, because apart from the debates that we've had on majority and minority, something which doesn't arise, one of the reasons why I never contested members raising it, Madam Speaker, is because I know that here in the Senate, the question of majority and minority doesn't arise, because it's as plain as can be, Madam Speaker, that even a plain census on which party, without including the disputed political parties of UDM, for example, who holds the majority. UDA on its own, together with Ford Kenya and DP, have 24 senators, which settles that conversation. But be that as it may, Madam Speaker, I felt that it would not be appropriate for me to interrupt for people to express their opinion on this matter, because that's what democracy is about. And opinion can never be limited, Madam Speaker. The only point at which I felt like rising, Madam Speaker, is when a colleague referred us to standing Article 108 of our Constitution, something which is akin, Madam Speaker, to a taboo subject to those who understand the operation of this House. If there is a clause of the Constitution that has been used to disparage this House, Madam Speaker, in the counterpart House, it is that Article 108. And it broke my heart that one of the leaders today actually agreed with their position and insisted that this House is subservient to the decisions of the National Assembly. That when they make a decision, we are supposed to follow suit without question. I will, Madam Speaker, I allowed it to slide because I believed that with the wisdom of time and age, that member will come to appreciate the importance of the independence of this House and the reason why our decisions remain to be final and cannot be challenged or debated in the subsequent House, Madam Speaker. You know for a fact, as Senator Moses Kajwang alluded to, that this Constitution has been found to be inconsistent in terms of its use of the term National Assembly and Parliament. That is why you find, for example, Madam Speaker, that there are state officers that we actually vet alongside National Assembly, like the Inspector General of Police, Governor of Central Bank, and others that were left out, Madam Speaker, which points out to very glaring errors that it was actually not, it might be in letter, but not in the spirit of the Constitution, of how Parliament and National Assembly has been used interchangeably, Madam Speaker. Perhaps it was the works of an over-enthusiastic draftsman, Madam Speaker, or somebody cheekily actually did that to spite this House, Madam Speaker, and we cannot be the ones that agree to that kind of error and say that a House of equal importance in a bicameral legislation, Madam Speaker, can take leadership from the other House. I don't agree with that, Madam Speaker. But the rest of the things that have been said is what makes this House a House of debate. It's good, and it was nice, Madam Speaker, to see members debate and engage on issues. I appreciate that, whether pro or against, Madam Speaker. You know, the work of opposition is not easy. Sometimes you have to come and do certain things just for the cameras. I did that for the last 5 years, in the last time of Parliament, Madam Speaker, and we were used to it. Then Senator Maruma will frown at me because you are saying you are delaying government business. Government business must continue. Today, things change, and in future you never know what will happen, because that's the essence of politics, Madam Speaker. But I want to appreciate that further down the line, many members have agreed with us that we need to prioritize a lot of business that is before this House, Madam Speaker. The state of use of resources, Madam Speaker, in our counties is something that will trouble every senator. That we have to wait for some dubious institutions such as, I don't know, Infotrack, and I don't know which one, Wekeza, and I don't know, some funny institutions that have no history of doing professional work that can be judged by the truth of time to establish whether their work is professional or otherwise, to give us the ranking of the performance of governors and county governments, Madam Speaker, is, Madam Speaker, the religion of duty on the part of Senate, Madam Speaker. This House, Madam Speaker, must come up with mechanisms upon which the template and the tools, Madam Speaker, for measuring performance of a county government, Madam Speaker. We cannot continue to sit here as intellectuals, you know, and just be happy to see people post. And we know how many of these findings are procured, Madam Speaker, that if you pay, then you can be ranked to be on top. You don't need to be a genius to know the performance. If, for example, Governor George Natembeya was performing as well as that opinion poll wants to show us, Madam Speaker, then he'd be making news, Madam Speaker, for the things that he's doing in Trans Nzoia and not for the insults that he is spewing. I have a particular problem, Madam Speaker, with leaders and governors who are known more for their political jabs more than their performance at county level. And in that I include even respected leaders like Senior Counsel James Orengo, Madam Speaker. If as a county governor, the only thing that people read about you is what you have said about what is happening nationally, but nothing about industries in your county, how you have increased on-source revenue, Madam Speaker, then there is a problem in your county. Madam Speaker, this House needs to legislate this time ways and means of measuring performance in county government. And those tools are there. There are things that we can check. How have you as a governor increased on-source revenue from the time that you came in? How have you reduced deficit, Madam Speaker, in terms of fiscal expenditure between recurrent expenditure and what you spend in development, Madam Speaker? What is your corruption index? How have you reduced pending bills? Are you accruing more or less? Surely, Senator Eddy, are those difficult things that you at Budget and Finance Committee cannot lead this House into establishing those things, so that we have to resign to some dubious institutions to tell us how county governments are performing? As a House, Madam Speaker, we must do better, Madam Speaker. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I agree that we have very serious legislative work ahead of us this time. Therefore, I want to plead with colleagues that let us conclude on this business, determine the House Business Committee, they get down to work immediately, despite the fact that it is 5:58 upon the voting of this motion, Madam Speaker. I am sure we shall retire to room 5 to determine the business for tomorrow, because we must fold up our sleeves and do justice to devolution, Madam Speaker. With those very many remarks, I beg to reply and urge the House to support this list. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Majority. Thank you, Majority Leader, for that very passionate response and reply to the motion that is on the floor of this House. I want to request Sergeant at Arms to ring the division bell for 3 minutes. For 3 minutes. Sergeant at Arms, division bell for 3 minutes.